Most people fantasize about winning the lottery and all the smart, responsible things they do with millions of dollars. Then there are these winners who prove that money can't buy common sense and that the fastest way to lose a fortune is to win one first. Buckle up for a masterclass in how to turn financial freedom into financial disaster. 1. Marcus won $8 million dollars and immediately decided he was now qualified to be a professional investor, despite having never owned a stock in his life. He dumped his entire winnings into a cryptocurrency that his barber's nephew had created as a joke. Marcus was convinced he'd discovered the next Bitcoin and spent weeks explaining blockchain technology to anyone who would listen, using terms he'd learned from a single YouTube video. When cryptocurrency crashed to zero value 3 months later, Marcus lost everything and was left explaining to bankruptcy lawyers why he'd invested millions in digital currency managed by a teenager named Kyle. 2. Jennifer won $12 million and bought 47 cars because she always wanted options. Not classic cars, not luxury vehicles with resale value, just random cars from every dealership in town. Her driveway looked like a used car lot explosion, complete with duplicates of the same model in different colors. She hired a full-time mechanic just to maintain vehicles she never drove and paid more in insurance premiums than most people earn in a year. When she ran out of money 5 years later, she discovered that 47 depreciated vehicles were worth about as much as 3 decent cars, and she couldn't afford the storage fees to keep them all. 3. Robert decided winning $15 million meant he was now a real estate mogul and bought 23 houses in the same neighborhood without inspection or research. Half the houses had serious structural problems. Several were in flood zones, and 3 were supposedly haunted according to local folklore. Robert spent more on repairs and renovations than the original purchase prices, hired contractors who saw him coming from miles away, and discovered that being a landlord required actual skills beyond writing checks. His real estate empire crumbled when he couldn't afford the property taxes and maintenance costs for 24 homes he'd never actually visited. 4. Sandra won $6 million and immediately started a nonprofit organization to help lottery winners make better financial decisions, apparently missing the irony entirely. She hired her entire extended family as highly paid consultants, rented a mansion as the organization's headquarters, and spent $2 million on a charity gala that raised exactly $347 for the cause. Sandra's nonprofit existed mainly to employ people who had no qualifications beyond being related to her, and the organization folded when she realized she'd spent more money starting a financial responsibility charity than most lottery winners lose in their first year. 5. Tony won $20 million and decided to become a professional gambler because he was obviously lucky. He moved to Las Vegas, bought a penthouse suite, and proceeded to lose $50,000 per night at poker tables, while convincing himself he was developing a system. Tony's gambling strategy consisted mainly of betting increasingly larger amounts to win back previous losses, a method that professional gamblers call going broke really fast. Within 2 years, he'd lost his entire fortune and then was working as a casino greeter, explaining to visitors why they should gamble responsibly while he lived in a studio apartment behind the strip. 6. Michelle won $9 million and immediately hired a personal chef, personal trainer, personal stylist, personal assistant, and personal life coach, apparently believing that wealth required a full-time entourage. Her monthly payroll for people to manage her basic adult responsibilities exceeded what most families spend in a year. Michelle's personal staff began managing her staff, creating layers of employees whose job was mainly to coordinate with other employees. When she couldn't afford to keep paying everyone, her personal assistant had to personally fire all the other personal staff, including himself. 7. Kevin won $14 million and launched a luxury ice cream company, despite having zero food industry experience and a lactose intolerance that prevented him from taste testing his own products. He spent $3 million on a factory, hired celebrity endorsers, and created flavors like Millionaire's Mint and Fortune Cookie Crunch that tested poorly with focus groups who thought they tasted like expensive mistakes. Kevin's ice cream empire melted faster than his products in summer heat. and he ended up selling ice cream bars from a cart outside the factory he could no longer afford to operate. 8. Lisa won $11 million and decided to build a theme park in her backyard because she wanted to give back to the community. Her backyard theme park featured homemade roller coasters, a Ferris wheel assembled from internet instructions, and carnival games that she'd designed herself using materials from hardware stores. The local health department shut down Lisa Land before it could open when inspectors discovered that homemade amusement park rides violated approximately 847 safety codes. Lisa's theme park dream cost her $4 million and left her with a backyard full of ride parts that she eventually sold as scrap metal. 9. Charles won $16 million and immediately started buying every business in his small town, convinced that owning everything would make him the unofficial mayor of success. He purchased the hardware store, the diner, the gas station, the dry cleaner, and the local newspaper without knowing how to run any of them. Charles discovered that owning businesses required actually managing them, and his empire of small-town commerce began failing simultaneously when he tried to run everything from his living room using a whiteboard and good intentions. His business-buying spree turned into a business-selling crisis when he realized that bankruptcy was the only way to stop losing money on ventures he never understood. 10. Patricia won $7 million and hired a documentary crew to film her inspiring lottery winner journey, spending $800,000 to document her inspiring rise to wealth and inevitable fall from grace. The documentary became a cautionary tale about lottery winners who waste money on vanity projects like hiring documentary crews to film their poor financial decisions. Patricia's inspiring story inspired people to avoid making the same mistakes she was making while being filmed making them, and the documentary crew eventually made more money selling the footage than Patricia had left when filming concluded. 11. David won $18 million and decided to become a professional inventor, despite never having invented anything more complex than excuses for being late to work. He spent $2 million on a workshop, hired engineers to help him develop ideas he'd scribbled on napkins, and filed patents for inventions that already existed or violated basic laws of physics. David's greatest invention was a self-heating ice cream cone that melted ice cream faster than people could eat it, and his innovation empire collapsed when he realized that being an inventor required understanding how things actually work. 12. Angela won $13 million and immediately enrolled in every college degree program she could find, apparently believing that education was something you could buy in bulk. She was simultaneously pursuing law school, medical school, engineering school, and a PhD in philosophy while hiring tutors to attend classes for her when scheduling conflicts arose. Angela's educational empire cost $400,000 per semester and left her with no degrees, but extensive knowledge about how to fail multiple academic programs at the same time. 13. Robert won $10 million and started a modeling agency for pets, convinced that the animal entertainment industry was his ticket to sustainable wealth. He hired professional photographers, rented studio space, and created portfolios for dogs, cats, and one particularly photogenic goldfish named Gerald. Robert's pet modeling empire struggled when he discovered that most pet owners weren't interested in paying professional modeling fees for animals that couldn't follow direction or stay still for photo shoots. His agency's biggest success was getting Gerald the goldfish a commercial for fish food, which paid $200 and cost $50,000 to produce. 14. Carmen won $8 million, decided to solve world hunger by starting a restaurant that gave away free food to anyone who looked hungry. Her restaurant served gourmet meals at no charge to customers who simply claimed to be food insecure, creating a business model that generated zero revenue while maintaining full operating costs. Carmen's hunger-fighting restaurant fed a lot of people who weren't actually hungry, but enjoyed free, expensive food. And the restaurant closed when she realized that charitable giving required sustainable financing, rather than just good intentions and unlimited spending. 15. Stephen won $22 million and immediately bought a small island. Despite living in a landlocked state and having no experience with marine transportation, international law, or island infrastructure management. His private island lacked electricity, running water, and cell phone service, but Stephen was convinced he could create a tropical paradise using YouTube tutorials and determination. Island ownership turned out to involve complex legal issues about sovereignty, environmental regulations, and logistics of getting supplies to land that could only be reached by boat or helicopter. Stephen's island empire consisted mainly of him sitting alone on expensive rocks, while paying massive fees for basic services he'd taken for granted on the mainland. 16. Monica won $14 million and launched a fashion line for pets, creating designer clothing for animals who couldn't understand why they needed couture outfits. Her pet fashion empire included tiny tuxedos, evening gowns for cats, and formal wear for hamsters, all priced like human designer clothing, but sized for creatures who preferred being naked. Monica's fashion shows featured reluctant animals wearing clothes they tried to remove while walking down runways they didn't want to be on. And her fashion empire collapsed when she discovered that most pet owners preferred their animals comfortable rather than fashionable. 17. Frank won $17 million and decided to become a professional philanthropist by starting a charity that gave money to people who needed money, which described approximately everyone. His charity had no application process, no oversight, and no criteria beyond "seems like they could use cash," resulting in long lines of people who'd heard about the guy giving away free money to anyone with a convincing story. Frank's philanthropic empire became a full-time job of listening to sob stories and writing checks until he realized he'd created a charity that was mainly funding other people's poor financial decisions while depleting his own wealth at record speed. 18. Rachel won $12 million and immediately hired a team of personal shoppers to buy her everything she might ever want, apparently believing that owning lots of stuff was the primary benefit of wealth. Her personal shopping team filled multiple warehouses with items she'd never requested, including 200 identical coffee makers, enough shoes to outfit a small army, and collections of art she didn't like but had been told were investment pieces. Rachel's shopping empire required hiring additional staff to organize and maintain possessions she didn't want, and she eventually paid more in storage and management fees than the items were worth. 19. Gary won $9 million and started a professional wrestling federation featuring senior citizens, convinced that elderly athletics was an untapped entertainment market. His wrestling federation featured competitors over 65 performing modified wrestling moves at slower speeds while wearing protective gear that made them look like geriatric superheroes. Gary's senior wrestling empire struggled with insurance costs, liability concerns, and audience confusion about whether they were watching sports or elder care demonstrations. The federation folded when Gary realized that professional wrestling required athletes who could move quickly without medical supervision. 20. Diana won $15 million and decided to become a professional matchmaker for wealthy people, despite being recently divorced and having no experience with relationship counseling or business networking. Her matchmaking service charged enormous fees to introduce rich people to other rich people, using criteria she developed based on romantic comedies and her own failed relationship experiences. Diana's matchmaking empire created several expensive dinners where incompatible wealthy people sat through awkward conversations while she explained why they were perfect for each other, and her business closed when she realized that successful matchmaking required understanding people rather than just collecting fees from them. 21. Kenneth won $19 million and immediately started buying every vintage item he could find, convinced that collecting old things would make him an antiques expert overnight. His collecting empire filled several buildings with items ranging from valuable antiques to overpriced junk, but Kenneth couldn't tell the difference and paid premium prices for everything. His vintage collection included furniture that was falling apart, antique electronics that were just old broken appliances, and collectibles that were only valuable to the people selling them to Kenneth at inflated prices. 22. Brenda won $11 million and decided to open a luxury spa for pets, offering services like doggy massages, cat meditation sessions, and aromatherapy for anxious hamsters. Her pet spa featured equipment designed for animals who didn't want to be there, services that animals couldn't appreciate, and prices that even wealthy pet owners found ridiculous. Brenda's spa empire struggled when she discovered that most pets preferred simple care at home, rather than expensive spa treatments that stressed them out, and her business closed when the relaxation center for animals became a source of anxiety for everyone involved. 23. Harold won $16 million and launched a luxury food truck that served gourmet meals from a vehicle that cost more than most people's houses. His food truck empire featured a mobile kitchen equipped with restaurant-quality appliances, a full waitstaff, and menu items that took 45 minutes to prepare while customers stood in parking lots. Harold's gourmet food truck served excellent food to confused customers who expected food truck meals to be fast and affordable, and his mobile restaurant closed when he realized that luxury dining and truck-based service were fundamentally incompatible concepts. 24. Melissa won $13 million and immediately enrolled in flight school, convinced that owning a private jet required personal piloting skills rather than just hiring professional pilots. Her aviation empire included purchasing an airplane before learning to fly it, hiring instructors to teach her skills. She wasn't capable of learning and spending more on flight training than most people spend on houses. Melissa's piloting dreams crashed when she realized that flying planes required abilities she didn't possess, and that her expensive airplane was mainly useful as the world's most expensive lawn ornament. 25. Victor won $20 million and decided to become a professional sports team owner by purchasing a minor league baseball team that he intended to manage personally despite never having played organized sports beyond elementary school. His sports empire featured a team owner who tried to coach, manage, and play simultaneously while making decisions based on baseball movies rather than actual sports knowledge. Victor's baseball empire struck out when he discovered that professional sports required expertise he didn't have, and that owning a team was more expensive than buying one. 26. Nancy won $8 million and started a luxury daycare center for wealthy children, featuring services like personal chefs, individual tutors, and entertainment coordinators for toddlers who couldn't appreciate premium childcare. Her daycare empire charged enormous fees for services that confused children and annoyed parents who realized their kids were happier playing with cardboard boxes than expensive educational toys. Nancy's luxury childcare center closed when she discovered that quality childcare required understanding children rather than just spending money on them. 27. Donald won $14 million and immediately started a personal security company to protect himself from people who might want his money, hiring bodyguards to guard him from threats that existed mainly in his imagination. His security empire featured armed guards following him to grocery stores, background checks for anyone who wanted to have conversations with him, and security protocols for activities like walking his dog or checking his mailbox. Donald's personal protection cost more than most people's salaries and created a fortress mentality that isolated him from normal human interactions, while depleting his wealth to protect money he was spending on protection. 28. Rebecca won $18 million and decided to become a professional party planner by throwing elaborate celebrations for herself and anyone who would accept invitations to events they didn't want to attend. Her party planning empire featured theme parties for occasions that didn't exist, celebrations that cost more than most weddings, and entertainment that confused guests who weren't sure what they were celebrating. Rebecca's party empire collapsed when she realized she was paying enormous amounts to throw parties for people who were mainly attending for free food and open bars. 29. Gregory won $12 million and launched a consulting business to help lottery winners manage their money, despite having no financial background and actively demonstrating poor money management while starting his consulting empire. His financial consulting business featured advice from someone who was making the same mistakes he was warning clients to avoid, and his consulting empire consisted mainly of Gregory learning about money management by failing to manage his own money while charging people for insights he didn't possess. 30. Donna won $10 million and decided to become a professional life coach for wealthy people, offering advice about problems she'd never experienced to clients who were wealthier than she was before winning the lottery. Her life coaching empire featured someone who'd recently become wealthy, giving advice about wealth management to people who'd been wealthy longer than she'd owned money. Donna's coaching business struggled when clients realized they were paying for advice from someone whose main qualification was accidentally becoming rich. 31. Carl won $15 million and immediately started buying exotic animals to create a private zoo in his backyard. Despite living in a suburban neighborhood with homeowners association rules and city ordinances about wildlife ownership. His exotic animal empire featured creatures that required specialized care he couldn't provide, veterinary bills that exceeded most people's annual salaries, and neighbors who weren't thrilled about living next to someone who owned tigers and lived like a discount version of a wildlife sanctuary. Carl's animal empire was shut down when city officials discovered that suburban neighborhoods weren't zoned for safari parks. 32. Linda won $17 million and decided to become a professional photographer by purchasing every piece of camera equipment ever manufactured, and opening a studio that looked like a camera store had exploded. Her photography empire featured equipment she didn't know how to use, services she couldn't provide, and prices that reflected the cost of her equipment rather than the quality of her work. Linda's photography business struggled when clients realized that expensive cameras don't automatically create talented photographers, and that good photography requires skills beyond equipment ownership. 33. Arthur won $13 million and launched a luxury car rental business featuring vehicles that cost more than most people's houses and rental fees that exceeded most people's monthly salaries. His car rental empire struggled with insurance costs, maintenance expenses, and customers who couldn't afford to rent cars that cost more per day than most people earned per week. Arthur's luxury rental business discovered that there weren't enough wealthy people who needed to rent expensive cars they could afford to buy, and his fleet of expensive vehicles became expensive decorations in a garage he couldn't afford to maintain. 34. Stephanie won $11 million and decided to become a professional interior designer by redesigning every room in her house using the most expensive materials and services available. Her interior design empire featured rooms that looked like furniture showrooms, decorating costs that exceeded most people's home values, and design choices that prioritized expense over functionality. Stephanie's design business struggled when she realized that expensive decorating and good decorating were different skills, and her house became a monument to poor taste executed with unlimited budgets. 35. Walter won $19 million and immediately started a technology company to develop apps he'd imagined but couldn't describe to the programmers he hired to create them. His technology empire featured employees trying to build software based on Walter's vague descriptions of apps that might already exist or might be impossible to create. Walter's tech company burned through money developing applications that didn't work for problems that didn't exist, and his innovation empire collapsed when he realized that successful technology required understanding both technology and problems that needed solving. 36. Gloria won $9 million and decided to become a professional event coordinator by planning elaborate celebrations for holidays that didn't need elaborate celebrations. Her event planning empire featured parties for occasions like National Donut Day, International Left-Handers Day, and Appreciation for Cheese Month, with celebrations that cost more than most people's annual entertainment budgets. Gloria's event coordination business struggled when she discovered that most people didn't want to attend expensive parties for fake holidays, and that event planning required understanding what events people actually wanted to attend. 37. Eugene won $16 million and launched a luxury camping business that featured outdoor experiences with indoor amenities, creating a camping empire that eliminated everything people liked about camping while adding everything they went camping to escape. His glamping empire featured tents with full kitchen facilities, outdoor experiences with room service, and nature retreats that required more staff than most hotels. Eugene's luxury camping business failed when he realized that people who wanted luxury accommodations stayed in hotels, and people who wanted camping experiences preferred actual camping. 38. Marjorie won $12 million and decided to become a professional organizer by hiring teams of people to organize her own possessions and then offering similar services to other wealthy people who needed organization help. Her organization empire featured professional organizers organizing other professional organizers while Marjorie supervised organization projects she didn't understand. Her organizing business struggled when clients realized they were paying premium prices for services that were mainly about hiring people to move stuff around rather than actually creating organized systems. 39. Leonard won $14 million and immediately started a luxury transportation service featuring vehicles that were too expensive to use for normal transportation and too impractical for luxury service. His transportation empire included limousines that were too long for most streets, buses with amenities that passengers didn't want, and ride services that cost more than most people's monthly transportation budgets. Leonard's luxury transportation struggled with operating costs that exceeded revenue and customer bases that preferred normal transportation to expensive transportation that was mainly expensive. 40. Barbara won $8 million and decided to become a professional wellness consultant by offering health advice she'd learned from internet research and personal experiences that didn't apply to other people. Her wellness empire featured health recommendations from someone whose main qualification was accidentally becoming wealthy enough to afford expensive health treatments. Barbara's wellness consulting struggled when clients realized they were paying for health advice from someone whose health expertise consisted mainly of being able to afford expensive wellness treatments that may or may not have been beneficial. 41. Russell won $21 million and launched a luxury pet hotel that featured accommodations nicer than most human hotels and services that pets couldn't appreciate or understand. His pet hotel empire included suites with flat-screen TVs for animals that didn't watch television, gourmet meals for creatures that preferred simple food, and spa services for pets that mainly wanted to go home. Russell's luxury pet accommodation struggled when pet owners realized their animals were happier at home, and that luxury pet services were mainly about making humans feel better about leaving their pets, rather than actually improving pet experiences. 42. Dolores won $18 million and decided to become a professional party entertainer by hiring entertainment acts for herself and then offering similar services to other wealthy people who wanted expensive entertainment for small gatherings. Her entertainment empire featured concerts for audiences of 5 people, magic shows for parties where guests mainly wanted to talk, and entertainment that cost more than most people's wedding budgets. Dolores' entertainment business struggled when she realized that most parties didn't need professional entertainment, and that expensive entertainment wasn't automatically good entertainment. 43. Theodore won $15 million and immediately started a luxury cleaning service that featured cleaning teams with more equipment and supplies than most businesses used for operations much larger than house cleaning. His cleaning empire featured cleaning services that took longer and cost more than most people's cleaning budgets while achieving results that weren't noticeably better than normal cleaning services. Theodore's luxury cleaning business struggled when clients realized they were paying premium prices for cleaning that was mainly expensive rather than superior. 44. Vivian won $7 million and decided to become a professional gift consultant by offering advice about expensive presents for people who had enough money to buy whatever they wanted but needed help deciding what to buy. Her gift consulting empire featured recommendations for expensive items that recipients didn't want, gift-giving advice that prioritized cost over thoughtfulness, and present selection services that cost more than most people spent on gifts for entire years. Vivian's gift consulting struggled when she discovered that good gifts required understanding recipients rather than just recommending expensive items. 45. And finally, there's Warren, who won $25 million and decided to solve every problem in his life by throwing money at it until the problems went away or the money ran out, whichever came first. Warren hired people to handle every aspect of his existence. Someone to choose his clothes, someone to order his food, someone to make his decisions, someone to have his conversations, and someone to manage the people who were managing his life. His comprehensive life management empire created layers of employees whose jobs were mainly coordinating with other employees, while Warren sat in his mansion wondering why he felt more isolated and stressed than before he won the lottery. Warren's money solves everything approach worked until he ran out of money to throw at problems, and discovered that the biggest problem in his life was his approach to solving problems. When his empire of hired help collapsed due to lack of funds, Warren was left with no money, no life skills, and no idea how to function as an adult who had to make his own decisions and tie his own shoes. Here's the brutal truth about lottery winners. Most of them prove that winning money and knowing what to do with money are completely different talents. These people discover that financial freedom requires financial wisdom, and that the quickest way to lose a fortune is to think that having money means you understand money. The real lottery was the financial literacy they never learned along the way. Want to know the secret to handling lottery winnings? Don't win the lottery. But if you do, maybe don't take advice from people who turned millions into cautionary tales. Subscribe if you want to keep your money longer than these lottery winners kept theirs.